Meeting is being recorded.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to this presentation of the City of Fort Lauderdale's Tranche 2 Neighborhoods Stormwater Management Improvements. My name is Patricia Carney, and I'm with Hazen and Sawyer, and I will be moderating this session today. With us from the City of Fort Lauderdale are Omar Castellon, Talal Abi Karam, Roberto Betancourt, Deborah Cueva, and Marie Pierce. I believe I have everyone. From Hazen and Sawyer, with me here are the project manager, Robert Taylor, and heading the planning effort for us is Lucia Medina. Rob and Lucia will go through the roughly 20-minute presentation. Following the presentation, they, along with city staff, will be available to answer questions that you might have. If you have any questions as we go through the presentation, please feel free to enter them in the question box, and we will get to them as soon as the presentation is over and we have the Q&A session. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob Taylor.
Thank you, Trish. Appreciate it. And again, thank you all for being here tonight. We're glad to be able to talk with you about the Tranche 2 Neighborhood Stormwater Management Improvement Projects, which is really a major component of the program that the City of Fort Lauderdale is calling Fortify Lauderdale. Let's see. There we go. So this evening, the primary objectives are going to be to give you an overview of the city's stormwater management program, to talk a bit about some of the planning and conceptual design efforts are currently ongoing. We'll have an opportunity to share with you some means by which you can provide your input and concerns about flooding and other conditions within your neighborhood. And then we'll talk a little bit about what you can expect in the next steps. And so Tranche 2 of the Stormwater Resilience Plan for the City of Fort Lauderdale, as I had mentioned, is part of what we are calling Fortify Lauderdale. And Fortify Lauderdale is a program that was really started by the City Commission a little more than a year ago in response to the extensive flooding that has happened. Really, if you go all the way back to November 2020, we had some significant flooding in the city at that point in time. Obviously, the historic rainfalls of April 2023, and then again the following summer of 2024. And this trend of these much more common and recurring heavy rainfall events and their flooding impacts on the city drove the city to really accelerate a program which it had begun back in the 2016-2017 era. And so tonight is about a piece of the neighborhood outreach program that has been a part of Fortify Lauderdale. We started this back in October of 2024. The project team, Hazen and Sawyer and the city have gotten together to conduct 11 of these meetings in person. Through those meetings, we've engaged about 25 homeowners and civic associations and miscellaneous other residents that live in and around the boundaries of the project. And so tonight really is the culmination of that program. And we will be moving on with some additional neighborhood meetings, which I will talk about now. So if you look at the graphic here, the blue pin is reflective of where we are in the process today. We're right here in the planning and conceptual design phase. That's what we've been meeting with individuals throughout the city relative to, primarily in this first meeting, gathering a lot of input from them relative to their concerns about flooding in their respective neighborhoods. As we move forward in the program and move into the final design phase in the various neighborhoods, we'll have a second set of meetings with those affected communities, so that we can share more concrete details relative to the design with them. And then once we are in the bidding and toward the end of the bidding process, which is where the city will be moving forward to choose a contractor to build the work, we will meet a third time so we can talk more definitively with neighbors about what they can expect during the construction period and prepare them for that process. So as we get started with this evening, I wanted to go over just a little bit of terminology related to stormwater management so that we're all kind of on common ground here. Rainfall, I think we probably all understand that one. Groundwater, we probably understand it pretty well. We know that's that water table, and we know when it rains extensively, that water table starts to rise. Ground gets a little mushy under our feet. And what that's doing is taking up that storage for rainfall in the soil column, and that's what creates conditions that are really conducive to excessive runoff and flooding in our neighborhoods. Runoff is that water that can't seep into the ground, runs off, and we've got to find something to do with it or it does become flooding. Right of way, very important. So our roadways in the city are contained within the right of way, but so are a number of other things. That right of way extends actually beyond the pavement of the roads. It may include sidewalks, bike paths, certainly utilities. Both the cities and others are located underground within these rights of way. But very importantly, in the city of Fort Lauderdale and many South Florida communities, is the existence of a swale area that's within that right of way. And that swale is a very important component to the stormwater management system in a number of the city's neighborhoods. It allows a place for that water to shed off of the roadways into that grassed area. A proper swale will be slightly depressed, and that water can sit in there while it percolates into the ground and, very importantly, recharges our groundwater table. Catch basins and inlets. We see them every day in our daily lives. You're driving along, you're walking along, you see these graded openings that will go down. They lead into a system of pipes, which we call a storm drainage system or a storm sewer, that allows us to move that water to places that we'd rather have it than in our streets and yards. Storm lines or storm pipes. The city has miles and miles and miles of them. The majority of those today are what we would call gravity mains. They flow under the force of gravity. But the city is building a number of stormwater pump stations as part of its program. And so any place where we're going to add energy to that water to move it, we're going to call those force mains. Manholes, again, something we commonly encounter day to day. You're driving over them in your passage over the roadways, usually a round cover over top. And those are basically an access way into those underground storm drainage systems. Allows us to get in there and inspect the system, maintain the system. Tidal valves, really important in Fort Lauderdale. We have so much tidal waterway within the city. These tidal valves are really slick in that they only allow water to flow one way. So we've designed these storm drainage systems. They're meant to capture water in our streets and yards, flow it to these waterways. But what we have, particularly when we see king tides or excessive storm surge, is that the water sometimes gets so high that it could actually flow backwards through that pipe and back up into the streets and yards. And so we put these tidal valves or one-way valves on there so that that backflow can't occur. Discharge or outfall is simply that place at which those storm drainage pipes empty out into some kind of a receiving water body. And I think we all are very familiar with the idea of seawalls and canals and water bodies. And so this is just photographs and images of some of those components that we were just talking about. So back to Fortify Lauderdale. Primary goal, as I alluded to before, to improve resilience to impacts of climate change within the city's most vulnerable neighborhoods and communities. And it is the Tranche 2 neighborhood stormwater improvements is really the biggest public investment piece related to Fortify Lauderdale. We're going to talk about the 17-ish neighborhoods that are included in Tranche 2. I also want to bring your attention to the idea that the city of Fort Lauderdale has a lot of really good information on its website relative to its stormwater program and resilience. You can go there by clicking on the city's website. Included amongst that information is a monthly progress report that will let you know how things are moving along in projects, maybe your neighborhood, maybe other neighborhoods that you're interested in. And from time to time, we'll have other just miscellaneous information that may be of interest to you as it relates to stormwater and climate change. So I mentioned tranche 2 or phase 2, tranche 1, phase 1, whatever terminology suits you best. So there were 8 original neighborhoods that are currently underway as a part of tranche 1. And on the slide, you can see reflected the location of those and then their names to the left-hand side of the slide. The Edgewood and River Oaks neighborhood projects are now complete. The Dorsey Riverbend project is well underway. The Durs neighborhood project substantially complete. The Progresso Village project is just getting underway. The city has secured a contractor to do that work, and that will be getting started here shortly. The neighborhood project for Victoria Park, we expect to go out to bid here in the next month or so. The Southeast Isles project is under design and permitting right now, as is the Melrose Manors Riverland Civic Association project. So these were the 8 original neighborhoods. And before the Fortify Lauderdale program came on, the idea was that the city would do about another 7 or 8 neighborhoods. That's when the city commission decided that they would accelerate and expand the program to the 17 neighborhoods that we're currently looking at. So there were some key steps that were necessary to advance the tranche 2 planning effort. Back when we started the initial 8 neighborhoods, we created a stormwater master plan computer model for the city. It includes a digital elevation model, so can tell the terrain and elevations throughout the city. Includes the infrastructure of the city's storm drainage system, a lot of hydrologic and hydraulic boundary conditions that needed to be included in that model. So when we came around and we moved into tranche 2 in 2024, a lot of that information needed to be updated based upon the passage of time, new information that we know relative to climate change and rainfall events. And so that's been done. We're using that model to conceptualize the improvements that are needed in the tranche 2 neighborhoods. And then importantly, as we move forward, we will be applying for a conceptual permit with Broward County. Broward County is the entity that will be permitting and approving all of the work that is to be included here. We did that same thing with the 8 neighborhoods that were in the, in the first phase, and that worked extremely well. Public outreach, very important in both tranche 1 and now in tranche 2. Again, part of that outreach and engagement is what we're doing tonight. And then, as you'll see when we talk about the schedule, this is a program that will last over a significant period of time. So we wanted to make sure we developed some program management tools that would allow for continuity and consistency over the life of this program. And so what you're seeing now, in absolutely no particular order, and I've stressed that in each of the meetings we've had, there is nothing relative to the numbers that you see here as far as that relates to the order in which projects might be tackled. But these are the 17-ish neighborhoods. I say ish because we know that stormwater doesn't know neighborhood boundaries. And so there are some areas where we leak outside of those actual formal neighborhood boundaries. What we've done is we've taken those 17 neighborhoods, and in areas where it made sense due to their proximity or maybe their very common characteristics, we have aggregated them into 12 projects. And so here you see projects A through L. Again, no particular order relative to these at this juncture. But these are the 12 projects that we will be moving out on during tranche 2. And then I mentioned the schedule just a minute ago, and this is a very preliminary basic look at what that schedule we expect it to be. We're right there where that red pin is now in the planning phase and putting together the conceptual designs for the 17 neighborhoods, the 12 projects, with the expectation that we will group those into three sets, if you will, of roughly 4 neighborhood projects each. And we will start the first of those anticipated fairly early in 2025. We will get started with those as they're moving through the course of design, permitting, and into construction. We will begin the second set of neighborhood projects. Same thing, we'll get those going in design, bidding, permitting, and then we will begin with the third set of 4 neighborhoods. And the prioritization, the ordering of those neighborhoods is still something that we're working on. We do have a City Commission conference meeting scheduled for March the 18th, and we'll be talking more about the ordering of neighborhoods and which order they might go forward in during that meeting. The idea is, though, that we would complete all 17 of these neighborhoods, all 12 projects by 2034. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Lucia Medina, who has been managing the planning and modeling portion of the program for Hazen and Sawyer. And so take it over, Lucia, please.
Yes, thanks, Rob. All right, so tonight I'd like to discuss a little bit more specifics of what's been going on under the planning phase for Tranche 2. This slide shows and summarizes some of the field work. We've gone out to all of the Tranche 2 neighborhoods and conducted a field survey and also taken pictures under both dry and wet conditions. So this map shows where we've been to. This is in addition to all of the data, historical data that the city has shared with us and the planning and design teams for pictures during historical events and what the conditions are in these neighborhoods. This field survey was focused on 4 categories: swale conditions, existing infrastructure, outfall conditions, and then also, while we're standing on the field, taking a look and starting to put mitigation strategies or potential mitigation strategies together, seeing what will work in this particular area, given the characteristics and vulnerabilities that we've seen out there. We focus on these 4, buckets, if you will, while we're standing out there, because we find that they're the most effective. And we have put all of this data loaded into a Power BI dashboard and aggregated it by neighborhood and now by project. And so it was quite a large data collection effort to inform what the conditions are, to make sure that the existing infrastructure is verified out on the field, to take a look at what the common characteristics are, trying to identify common bottlenecks. In some cases, those are the outfall conditions, and then putting together the view of what is occurring in this particular area and coming up with mitigation strategies and adaptations. So given all of the historical data, our field analysis, as well as our desktop analysis, and taking a look at the historical data sets, we've come up with a toolbox, if you will, of potential adaptation strategies that we come back to over and over again, citywide. These are best practices and adaptation strategies that we just come back to. So I'm going to go through them. At this point, during our in-person meetings, we would go through specifically each neighborhood. So I will just introduce the concepts, and if we have more specific questions, we can get to those at the end of the presentation. So for the first one is extending drainage system. This may be in a street or in an area where there isn't a drainage system that is chronically flooding. Also increasing conveyance capacity. That's when an existing system is under capacity for the conditions that are being observed today. It may have been designed quite a few years ago, and now we're seeing a different landscape, if you will, of conditions arising. So those piping and that infrastructure needs to be upsized. Rob mentioned installing pump stations where it makes sense, installing tidal valves in those areas that are tidally influenced and are seeing backflow into their systems. Capital maintenance are projects that are above and beyond what the city normally does for a maintenance project. This is when, the infrastructure the existing infrastructure has particular vulnerabilities that needs its own project to address. If you go down to the right, rehabilitating grass swales, as Rob mentioned, many of the neighborhoods depend heavily on swales, and those making sure that the swales are functioning to the best of their ability. Grading improvements as well, making sure that water is getting conveyed into the system. It can actually reach the structures. Raising seawalls, in some cases, they're very low, city-owned seawalls that need to be raised. Upgrading pump stations. There are existing pump stations in the city, and in those cases, we'd like to take a closer look and of the capacity and the conditions of those pump stations, and providing any adjustments there to make it as best as possible. And then the private resiliency program is on this slide. This applies to whether you're in a Tranche 2 neighborhood or not. It's really a program citywide and designed so that you'll be hearing more about this program, but it's designed so that we can gather our resources and point to the best and the best available resources and tools that the private owners, whether they're residential or commercial, can take a look at these guidance documents, so that together from the private side as well as the public side, we can both work towards a more resilient outlook. So these are really the tools that we just, again, keep coming back to. This is not everything we've thought of. And in addition to these tools, we're taking a close look at opportunities where we can incorporate green infrastructure and basin storage. So some of these elements, examples are looking at suitable landscaping and flood resilient materials, enhancing stormwater storage or ponds, bioswales and bioretention, looking at areas where we can incorporate permeable pavement and pavers, and rainwater harvesting. So this slide summarizes our adaptation strategies by project. And these are based on all the analysis that we've done in the planning portion of this project. This by no means says, whether it's a checkbox, says that a box is not going to be checked or not. We're still going through the conceptual design and even through final design. And so we're trying to put together the best adaptations throughout and tailor the design as we go, to make sure we cover all our bases. That these checks represent the adaptation strategies that we find for that particular project or area would be the most beneficial. So it just gives you a summary. We've also gone through and identified issues and development of conceptual adaptations for all neighborhoods and projects. Here we have 3 examples. This is from left to right: Riverland Village, Chula Vista and adjoining areas, Flagler Village, and Poinsettia Heights and Lake Ridge. I welcome anyone to go through some of the in-person presentations as well. There's additional slides that show this view for any particular project area. I'll just go really quick, go through that the the boundary is shown in green. That doesn't necessarily represent the whole area that's impacted. It's just representing the project boundary. And then these slides show existing infrastructure paired with the tributary drainage area and the subbasins of that existing infrastructure. The white triangles show the existing outfalls, and the lowest areas, we're talking less than 2.5 NABD, are shown in this purple color. So if you have specific questions or you'd like to study the project's area, I will again recommend to you go to the in-person meeting presentations. Everything's available through the Fortify Lauderdale website, and pull up that particular neighborhood slides, and you can take a closer look at what infrastructure is within your project area, where the outfall is, where the areas that are very low topographically, and there's more notes on that slide. So if anyone on the phone has any specific questions, we can get to those in a bit. And so for the 11 meetings, really the primary focus of this first series of meetings is to gather input from residents. The residents know their communities best, and this is the most valuable data set that we're trying to build. We've already gotten over 200 submittals of flood surveys, but again, here tonight, we're asking for you to submit a flood survey. This is an opportunity to share video, photos of flooding events, and there's some questions in there that ask more specifics. I can break out into the flood survey and give you an example of how to submit it. You should be able to use your phone or click on the link. Again, this presentation is going to be available on the city's website. And so please share it with your neighbors, share it with your friends in the community. We're trying to gather as much data as possible. We'd like to know very specifics to what you're seeing street by street, whether it's chronic flooding or nuisance flooding. It doesn't have to be, impassable flooding for it to be important. But if you do have information, we'd really like your input. So I'm just gonna finish the slides. We'll get to the example for the flood survey, and then we'll have some time in the end to answer your questions. And then lastly, what to expect next. Our field crews will continue to collect data in your area. So you're gonna see us out there during both wet and dry conditions. And we're collecting the flood survey. That link is open. Again, the responses for the flood survey are going directly to the planners and designers of these Tranche 2 projects. And then also, I'd like to point out again that on the city's Fortify Lauderdale website, there's the upcoming meetings will be posted there. So the next series of meetings for your neighborhood will be posted there. We're also actively coordinating with HOA presidents and civic association presidents to make sure we're getting the word out and make sure we can have as much participation as possible. So at this point, if you can submit your questions in the Q&A box, we'll try to get to as many as possible. I've left the flood survey out there. I can break into that now.
Yeah, let's
And
do it
then-
quick, and then we'll then we'll get to questions.
Okay, just real quick. So this is the flood survey. It has a link here for the Fortify Lauderdale website that we keep mentioning on the presentation. This has our monthly newsletters and events, and definitely check into that. But going back to the flood survey, so you would show.
Hi, Marcia, sorry to interrupt you. Your screen still shows the presentation.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can share.
Next one down. Oh, no, over. There you go.
Can you see it? No?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So again, this is the flood survey. This is the link I mentioned to the Fortify Lauderdale website. There's a map here so that you can denote the correct neighborhood, the number. We've numbered all of them. So you would report where you're coming from, 1 through 17. If you're outside of the Tranche 2 neighborhoods, you can add other and write in where you're reporting from. Each survey has up to 6 flooding locations. You can also submit as many surveys as you want. So to report a flooding location, you would just click on the map and then you would have to make that allow. So it'll track where you are, and then you can move the pin, say if you wanted to report this intersection. And then you can upload photos, video, documents, anything related to that flooding location here and answer the questions. The questions are for flood location 1 only. So this is to collect more specific data and trying to piece together what's happening in that location. So everything is optional. Fill out as much as you can. We're asking about the reason of flooding, the depth during flooding events of the flooded waters, the frequency. So how has this location been flooded before? And then you can check as many affected areas. And then you can also include pertinent information for that flood location in this box. And then if you want to move to the next flooding location, you just click number 2 and then start again. At the end, once you've reported all your flooding locations, we've added your name, email, phone number, optional to report, your contact information. So if we have any additional follow-up questions, and then at the bottom, there's just a general comment box that you can fill out for any pertinent information or general ideas about the program or the project itself. I will say that this is just a survey, so if you find yourself in immediate need for immediate assistance from the city, please report your concerns through their Fix It for Lauderdale. That's how you can open a ticket with the city so that they can address anything that's an emergency or needs immediate assistance.
Great. Thanks, Lucia. Why don't we go ahead? I think we've got a number of questions in the chat. Trish, you want to get us started and we'll try to start answering those, as many as we can.
Absolutely. And while we're going through this, you can either add them to the chat or raise your hand. And we'll get to the hand raises a little bit later. So we have 2 that are kind of similar. I'll group them together. One is from Tarpon River Civic Association, Lindsay Way, and she was saying that she was hoping to get moved to the first phase of work, as we noted, 4 projects per phase. And then as well, Chris Brennan asked, when will you announce who the first, second, and third phase neighborhoods will be? Would you like to speak to how that's being determined?
Right. So all of the questions relative to the ordering, who's going to be in the first phase, what the sequence of the neighborhoods will be, we should know much more about that after we have the conference meeting with the City Commission on March the 18th. I mentioned that during the presentation. So there will be a number of different criteria that will be taken into consideration there. But I expect that at that meeting, we will make significant headway relative to kind of the sequencing of these neighborhood projects.
Okay. A couple of other questions that are kind of grouped together. Kimberly Slavinhout said, good evening. Can we get contact information for someone we can reach out to with questions after these meetings? And then Mike Stone asked, is there an agenda for the meeting? And I'm guessing that we can go to.
So I think the agenda for the meeting we shared maybe just right after Mike entered that question. And then the question relative to the contact information, if you can share maybe a little bit more information about the nature of the question, depending upon if it's technical relative to the analysis that's going on right now, then we'll share Lucia and my information. You can contact us here at Hazen and Sawyer. Some questions might be more appropriate directly to go directly to staff at the city of Fort Lauderdale if it's, an existing problem or something that requires immediate attention, as Lucia pointed out, the Fix It FTL site. So if whoever had that question, dependent upon the nature of your question, it would be either us here at Hazen and Sawyer or the city's Public Works Department.
Great, thank you. Lindsay had a second question. Lindsay Way, she said, good evening. The question is, why was Tarpon River not listed on the map or within the phases being designed? The neighborhood flooded heavily and is affected by tidal. Requesting to please be put into the design phase with these other neighborhoods. Apparently the city has a problem contacting TRCA to let us know about the meeting on October 24th. I would say, Lindsay, that is project C on the map.
I think
right?
it is. I think Tarpon River, it might not have been labeled right on the map or whatever, but it is, Lindsay, Tarpon River is a part of project C.
So it is on there.
Yes.
Chris Brennan had another question, and he said, when will you be going back to neighborhoods for input? We were told back in November that this would occur sometime in early spring.
So good question. And really that will largely be dictated by the order of the neighborhoods. Remember that second meeting that we want to have with the neighbors will have more concrete information about the specific designs in those neighborhoods. So if your neighborhood is in those projects that are in the first group of 4, we would be coming out to see you. May not be in the first quarter, but likely shortly thereafter, we would be coming out to those neighborhoods. Neighborhoods that are in kind of the subsequent phases, those meetings would probably follow to some degree later, associated with when they would move into the design process.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Michael O'Brien said, good evening. Again, we didn't have a neighborhood meeting because we were not included. Sunset area does not have any storm drains and we flood. Is there any way to see if we are included in any adjacent project?
So we are, and as a part of our conceptual plan, I think we do have, if I'm recalling correctly, I think we do have a stub out drainage line that's coming through Riverland Village that would be able to accommodate future drainage connection from Sunset. So there is spot relative to Sunset. It is not in one of the 17 neighborhoods that's currently on the slate, but we are kind of planning forward to that in the work that we're planning for in Riverland Village.
Thank you. Aaron Gonzalez said, are there any plans to upgrade sewer systems, larger diameter pipes to increase flow rate? Current sewer capabilities and infrastructure doesn't seem to be keeping up with development.
Yeah, so I'm just going to differentiate there on that question. I'm imagining that the question is talking about storm sewer, different than sanitary sewer. Here in Florida, we keep those things separated. So yes, when Lucia went over kind of the tools in the toolbox, one of them was increasing the capacity of the systems, and that definitely includes increasing the sizes of some of these what are now undersized pipes. And so that is definitely a part of what we're doing. And part of the reasons, I think it was mentioned in the question, more development has happened. The other thing that we've seen and we've taken into consideration in the analytical analysis we're doing is that rainfall events compared to the historical ones that were used in planning and design for systems like in the city of Fort Lauderdale, rainfall volumes have increased anywhere from probably 18 to over 20%. So that same pipe that was fine when the neighborhood went in, 40, 50, 60 years ago is, to your point, not fine today.
Thank you, Rob. Trisha Halliday said, "Thank you for your presentation. I do not see anything about temporary watersheds, not rain gardens, to hold excess water temporarily." I'm gonna guess those are retention areas we're speaking of,
Bioretention,
or,
yeah. There's bioretention areas. There's bioretention areas. We're looking for areas that we can optimize and optimize storage. It gets a little tricky, right? Because we need to find the right area that's, that's conducive to these public projects. But yeah, we are looking at opportunities to include those.
anything else, Rob?
No, I mean, I would say that we're looking in general for storage in any number of manners, whether it's bioretention, whether it's traditional neighborhood swales. We're looking at underground storage. There are sometimes places in larger properties where underground storage can be incorporated into the system. So storage is a key in the fight against climate change and flooding in a place like the city of Fort Lauderdale, and we're looking at all options when it comes to that.
Okay, great, thank you. Mario Gonzalez from Tarpon River asked or stated that Southwest 8th Street dead ends. I believe it's a dead end street, and it always floods. It's been reported to the city before, but nothing has been done. So I'm not sure what neighborhood that is. Tarpon River, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So great that we've got that in the chat. I would ask the person posing the question. It would also be great if you could go into Lucia's flood survey and enter that as an area of concern. And to the extent that you can add detail relative to, sounds like the person putting the question forward has a pretty good understanding of what's going on there. If that can be articulated in the flood survey, that's a huge help to the team. So thank you for that.
Okay. Mike Stone. Mike Stone says there is a significant failure of a tidal valve. If there was one on Coconut Drive and there is no tidal valve there, then there definitely needs to be one in that location, because water pushes up out of the drains that are not on that street every time we have high tides.
Yeah, so Coconut Drive is in the Southeast Isles project that is currently under design, and tidal valves are definitely on slate for the outfalls, not only on Coconut Drive, but there are various aisles that are basically south of Las Olas, and so they're all kind of scheduled to get those tight valves.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Mike O'Brien left a comment, but I wasn't quite sure about 900 residents aren't going to be happy. Maybe Mike, if you or Michael, you could restate that later down, and I can ask the team about it. Chris Brennan asked, he said, please address, or she, I'm sorry, said, please address neighborhoods that want to preserve their tree canopy, especially ones like Riverside Park that have smaller roads. Additionally, are all the roads being elevated?
No to the roads being elevated. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not happening in any kind of significant fashion. We find that the harmonization of private property to elevated roads is problematic, especially a lot of the neighborhoods in Fort Lauderdale. The homes are built slab on grade with not a lot of relief between them. Relief, I mean kind of grade difference between those finished floor elevations and the road. So the last thing we want to do is to take away any of that slope that does exist. Relative to the tree canopies, great question. We have certainly, on all of the projects that we've done to this point, worked closely with the neighborhood. Fort Lauderdale, a lot of old historic neighborhoods with great tree canopy. And so we have been diligent about trying to work around those and preserve that great tree canopy. So as a part of the detailed design process, we would expect to work closely with the neighbors in the neighborhood to make sure that we achieve what we're trying to achieve from the flood protection standpoint without having to sacrifice the unique nature and aesthetic beauty of the neighborhoods.
Great, thank you. Mario Gonzalez, who previously had asked about, he's in Tarpon River, and he said that he has Southwest 8th Street, that it dead ends and whatnot. So he has a follow-up question, and he said, back to my original question, if there's going to be, if we're going to install a drain, a storm pipe on that street, I guess the question is, sorry, will we be installing a drain pipe on the street if there is none installed? And his particular location he was talking about was Tarpon River, Southwest 8th Street, dead end. And I believe you had asked him to participate in the flood survey.
Right. And yeah, if you can add that information in the flood survey, obviously we've got some of that information just here out of the chat. I can't tell you right now, I don't have in front of me whether or not there is right now specifically a storm drain and pipe that is proposed in that location, but we can certainly take a look at it. And certainly your input here will help us to, if we don't have one there, help us to determine whether or not one is appropriate in that location. So again, thank you for the input about your flooding condition.
Thank you. Lindsay Way had a question or a statement, and she said, that was a great question and would be greatly appreciated. While waiting on the later phases, as we will continue to be affected, do you know when you will have those options on hand for review? I'm not quite sure which question was being referred to. So maybe Lindsay, if you have a minute, you could
read the follow-up question again.
Sure. It says, that was a great question and would be greatly appreciated while waiting on the later phases as we will continue to be affected. Do you know when you will have those options on hand for review?
Okay.
So it was one of the other questions, but I'm not sure which one. So maybe Lindsay can help us out. Oh, I think it's the valve question, perhaps, because a little bit later she says, back to the valve question. Will the valves be installed before all the design phases or years out? Thank you for all your efforts and support.
Okay, so the Southeast Isles project, if that's the Coconut Drive one, those are coming in that project. But I will say, and this gets back to the Fix It for Lauderdale slide, I think that's still up there. If there's an immediate issue in your neighborhood, it may be something that can be tackled with a smaller scale project in the interim, especially for those projects that are going to be farther out on that timeline, going toward 2034. So I would, if you have those kinds of isolated issues, I think it would be good to share those through Fix It for Lauderdale, or to let us know about those. And there's a possibility that there could be some smaller scale phased improvements that might be made in the nearer term while we're waiting to get to some of these projects that are going to extend out closer to the 2030s, realizing that that's a long time to wait.
Okay, and then I believe Lindsay followed up and said, I've requested it on the Fix It app and they close it out, meaning it may not be being addressed. So maybe that's something that we could note.
Yeah, I'll note that.
Okay.
We'll coordinate with the city. That should be up there and working.
Perfect.
So,
and she says thank you for that.
mhm.
Okay, I saw Mr. Partington on here. Peter Partington, do you know the approximate ground elevations of the lowest neighborhoods that are on the list of 17 neighborhoods and the neighborhoods that are the highest elevation? Does ground elevation affect the severity of flooding?
The ground elevation definitely affects the severity of flooding. I would say the majority of the neighborhoods that we looked at had at least some areas that were below 2.5 feet in AVD. Yeah. They varied in in how widespread that is. Some of the neighborhoods, again, this gets to the point, there are some areas where some of the flooding problem leaks outside of the actual boundary of the neighborhood. There are also certain portions of some of the neighborhoods that are in pretty good condition today. They're either at a higher elevation, so water is able to soak into the ground and we don't have a congregation of flooding there, or they are already equipped with sufficient storm drainage infrastructure. So Some of the neighborhoods, we're having to tackle a portion of it only. But I would say, Mr. Partington, that most of the neighborhoods have at least some portion of them that are below 2.5 NAVD.
Okay. Michael O'Brien originally had said 900 residents weren't going to be happy, and I asked him to follow up with that to understand what he meant, and he said, sure. He said, by the way, thank you for the answers. Information is good. First off, we flood and it goes from front door to front door and the streets don't drain for a day or two. I think someone from the city owes an explanation to neighborhoods that pay taxes and have no storm drains and how they were left out of any stormwater projects.
I think it would be helpful if you're putting in a question to put what neighborhood you're reporting from so we can pinpoint what area we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So Michael O'Brien, if you wouldn't mind just letting us know what neighborhood you are coming from there.
And that would be good. And also, Mr. O'Brien, if you're talking about flooding door to door, the street in between, obviously, if you have at least even a representative location address wise, or you can drop a pin in Lucia's flood survey, that would be helpful. Not sure, whether anyone from the city wants to tackle the rest of that question now. I think the city understands that it's got a lot of storm drainage infrastructure to catch up on, and that's why Fortify Lauderdale was created. Like I said, probably toward the end of 2023, the realization that we are having more and more of these extensive, really severe rainfall events. And we have a lot of areas within the city that just don't have the appropriate infrastructure to deal with them. And so, as I mentioned during the presentation, what was going to be a fairly limited number of neighborhoods in Tranche 2, about 7, I think, was what was originally planned, has been expanded now to 17. So it's an extensive program between what is being spent on Tranche 1 and what we expect to spend on Tranche 2, probably going to be in excess of $750 million of investment by the city. So it's a lot to do for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hopping back to Mario Gonzalez's question on Tarpon River, he was on Southwest 8th Street. It's a dead end and it floods. Actually, Marie Pierce from the city did answer that question, and she said that the city of Fort Lauderdale does not have any city stormwater drainage on Southwest 8th Street between 7th Ave and 8th Ave. There is, however, Broward County gravity mains that convey stormwater from Southwest 9th to Southwest 7th. In addition to reporting the flood app, I would report to the Broward County via streets at broward.org. So thank you, Marie.
Thanks, Marie.
Okay, so we are down to Mr. Chris Brennan. River Oaks saw the installation of pumps. Smaller neighborhoods like Riverside Park and Sailboat Bend don't have the space for something of this size. Do all neighborhoods get these pump stations to remedy the flooding?
So not all neighborhoods will get or need pump stations, but many of them will. The one thing I think is important to Chris's question is that not all of the pump stations will look like, if you've been out to see the River Oaks pump station, I'm sure everybody's saying, oh my goodness, there's no way that's going in my neighborhood. And you're right, it probably wouldn't fit in any other neighborhood but River Oaks, just the luxury of that area pinned up against I-95 and toward the South Fork of the river. A variety of other pump stations that vary in size. There are a couple that are going in right now in Dorsey River Bend and in Durs that are basically fitting on single family lots, and they are being architecturally and aesthetically developed so that they just look like another home that's in the neighborhood. So that's kind of the mid-range, if you will. And then what you'll also see are a lot of them that are completely submersible stations. And all that will really be visible of those stations will be a control panel that's necessary for controlling and handling the electrical associated with the station. They'll be very similar if you drive around and you see what the wastewater lift stations look like in your neighborhood. A lot of the stormwater pump stations will have a very similar look from the ground level. So think about them coming in kind of three varieties, those fairly small submersible, all you see is a control panel type of a station, kind of a mid-range, which is something that can be architecturally and aesthetically put together to look like a single family home and fit into a neighborhood. And then the River Oaks facility is really kind of an entity to its own. There won't be, and that neighborhood pump station in River Oaks has to drain River Oaks and Edgewood. So it also is handling the largest drainage area of any facility that will be planned in this program.
Great, thank you. Robin, Lucia, John Barranco from Ponciana Park, Bermuda Riviera. I'm not sure if that's a area, but it's Ponciana Park. Says, my question pertains to the proposed seawall height increase and how this will help with resiliency. How does raising a seawall protect my home? Much like a swale helps store water, I believe the volume of water held in the rear yard of a property is needed to help store water. By constricting the waterways with seawalls, it seems that we are decreasing the potential volume we could otherwise store. I'm guessing in the waterway.
Yeah, so I'll if somebody from the city wants to add on, please feel free. But I'll start kind of with the answer to that question. So the city has a seawall ordinance. That seawall ordinance requires that the seawall be elevated if its overtopping is allowing water to move into either a public space, a public right-of-way, a public property, onto a neighbor's property. If it's not doing either of those two, my understanding is you won't be cited and you don't have to do anything with your seawall. The city, as a part of this program, the city is simply raising its seawalls on public property so that it can keep water from coming into the public rights of way. And when seawalls on private properties that are adjacent or raised in the future, that you'll have a comprehensive barrier to tidal flooding. I would say to you that the marginal additional capacity that you get by letting a seawall overtop and go into the backyard of a waterfront property is really insignificant relative to the volume and the mass of water that's happening during any kind of a tidal flux. So I don't know whether I saw Todd on the call earlier. I don't know whether he or Deborah or Roberto or Omar have anything that they want to add to that relative to the city ordinance goes.
Sounds what? Deborah's here. Go ahead, Deborah.
I was just going to say we will be able to, some of these questions, I'll make note of that one. We can follow up with emails and maybe provide a little bit additional of information as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Deborah.
Yeah, if I know Nancy, she's got that one down and she could give probably a way more complete answer than what I did. But I think that's probably the gist of it. If your seawall isn't creating a conduit to flood public property or other private property, I don't think there's anything that compels you at this point in time to raise it.
Great, thank you. Rob, Mike Stone previously had said there about a significant failure of a tidal valve if there was one in Coconut Drive. And I think we ended up talking about Southeast Isles. But actually he's in the Tarpon River neighborhood, just to let you guys know.
Oh, Coconut Drive. Okay.
Yeah, with regard to where those problems may or
Okay, that makes more sense.
I am conflating Coconut Drive with Coconut Isle, which is
yes.
has the same problem that Mike has. So
right.
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yes. Okay.
Rob and Patricia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Marie. I was just actually trying to type in the answer to that particular response. So the locations for the two inlets in Coconut Drive and Tarpon River are 829 Coconut Drive and 701 711 Coconut Drive, which is on the boundary of two properties.
Okay,
Okay. Thank
If I
you.
can
thanks, Marie.
find it again, I will try to enter it again.
Okay, thanks,
very
Marie.
much.
I think Lucia's jotting it down over here as we as we're answering
A
questions.
lot of great questions, everyone. We have 33 questions altogether so far.
Yeah, if we
Um,
can't get to them all this evening, we can,
We're almost there.
okay.
All right. Aaron Gonzalez, he said that in future outreach meetings and presentations, can you include more details about the neighborhoods that have been completed? Would help to report what work was completed and how conditions improve before and after projects are completed.
Yes, good
Noted.
idea. And probably by the time we come around to start talking about the design related element, kind of that next wave of meetings with the neighborhoods, we'll be able to provide some more of that information, because we will probably have 2 more of the neighborhood projects that will be completed at that juncture.
Great. Thanks, Rob. So if you remember, Michael O'Brien was talking about the fact that his neighborhood floods from door to door. I remember that. And we had asked him what neighborhood he was in, and he said he was in Sunset, and that his civic association asked us all to do the survey, and we have. We have also been asking for a city rep to attend our meetings, and we finally have one coming this week. We wanted to attend a neighborhood meeting, but we were never notified because we were not included in the project. So that's just a follow-up to Michael O'Brien's comment. From Robert Hanner, is there a possibility of accelerating the program as many properties are having interior flooding?
I think that the program is what we showed in the way of the schedule is about as fast as we can go. From several standpoints, you've got to be able to get these things designed, but it's also managing them through the process. It's how much construction can the city essentially have going at any given time without creating some pretty difficult situations, from traffic to impacts on neighbors. And so, one of the things that I mentioned before is the possibility of some interim phasing of some work within some of the neighborhoods, so that some of those that end up towards the back end of the program can get some more immediate relief to some of the most severe areas within those neighborhoods. But we will look at, are there possibilities of moving things more quickly? The city will have, they'll have to look obviously at that from the financial aspect. It's an expensive undertaking. The city's got a lot of other priorities as well. And so a lot of factors into that, but appreciate the comment. And I think that's probably one of the things, if we do look at it and we think there's an ability to accelerate things, I'm sure that the city would share that information on its website.
Okay, I have about 5 or 6 questions left. Next one is from Roosevelt Walters. I'm sorry, Mr. Walters. For the record, Roosevelt Walters is on the call. Thank you for the presentation, but it leaves me with a lot of questions. Be blessed. So the answer to that is that your information is posted, right? That we've presented today, and any follow-up questions are welcome.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's go back to Lindsay Way. Question is there a link to what city walls, is there a link to what walls the city are planning to raise that are city owned? In other words, a seawall master plan?
Seawall. The city has a seawall master plan, but I'm not sure if that's posted on their website.
Yeah, I don't know. Deborah, do you know, is the city seawall master plan posted on the city's website? And I think you all are in the process maybe of updating that master plan.
Yes, that's correct, Rob. And I'm not sure exactly where it is on the website, but I believe, and I'll double check right now. I think we should have Lindsay, if you feel comfortable putting your email address in the Q&A, I'll take that down and I'll find out where on the website it's located and send that to you.
Great, thank you so much. This is a new question from Estelle Brennan. Over the past 10 plus years, our city commission has systematically covered our green spaces, wooded areas with concrete and condos. When will this city, as many other cities have done, start buying up the green spaces that are left and create pocket parks that suck up water? I'm gonna leave that question, defer that question to the city, yeah?
I think so. I will say that not really answering the question posed here, or the spirit of the question. One of the things that we are trying to do is reclaim green space within the right of way. So places where, on a property level, swales and other green spaces have been paved over. We are trying to reclaim some of that through the course of this project. But I think the question really is talking about green space in a different scale. So I don't know whether anybody from the city wants to answer that question now, or whether we can get back to the question asker.
Hey,
Omar.
Rob, Omar here.
Hey, Omar.
That's probably more a question for DSD when they're providing permits for new construction and all that. That's something they could answer. I don't know if we can have somebody from DSD reply to that.
Great. Can we get the question asked back to kind of Deborah's question? If we can get maybe some contact information for the individual, then Omar, maybe somebody from DSD could provide some sort of a response.
I can follow up on that and make sure they provide a response.
And Estelle Brennan was asked that question.
Thanks, Omar.
Yeah. Mike Stone just said, thank you. You had to leave. Your presentation is much appreciated. Trisha Halliday, this is wonderful that there are more pump stations. However, what happens when compound flooding occurs and you are literally pumping water out with nowhere for it to go? Hence my previous question about temporary watersheds.
So one of the things that we had to do when we were obtaining this conceptual permit from Broward County is to show what the impacts would be of the various storm drainage improvements that we're talking about making, whether they be gravity or pumping, what the impact they would have would be on the receiving water bodies. And so that has all been modeled in our comprehensive watershed model to show that those impacts would not create a situation where those receiving water bodies couldn't continue to accept the flow from these proposed pump stations. It's a great question, and I think it's one that it really not only considers pump stations by the city of Fort Lauderdale, but we had to take into consideration what the pumping protocols and expectations would be from regional water managers like the South Florida Water Management District, who will also be moving water into the very tidal water bodies that we count on receiving our stormwater runoff from the city of Fort Lauderdale. So it's a good question. It's being analyzed at a very high level. And obviously we will make sure that we aren't in a situation where we're simply pumping water in a circle, if you will, and that we can't actually move that water away from the land masses that it's impacting.
Great, thank you. 3 questions left. I'll start with Michael O'Brien. He said, thank you for your candor and assistance with helping with this information. Chris Brennan said, is this meeting recorded and is this meeting recorded and will those who were unable to attend be able to access it?
I think that's a question. I don't know, Deborah, whether you know that how the handling of the recording of this is.
Yes, so it is being recorded, and we will try to have it posted tomorrow. And when it is posted, it will be through the city's YouTube, but we'll also tie a link back. We have all kind of information for this on the Fortify Lauderdale website, so there'll also be a link to it there.
Great. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah. And okay, snuck in with two more questions here. Will they be offering grants / funding? It would be helpful to have all of this. Thank you. And then Lindsay was someone who were asking for her email address and she posted it there. So grants and funding.
So on the grants and funding, the city actually has already been fairly successful in obtaining grants for these neighborhood projects. I can't, Omar or Deborah may have the numbers off the top of their head, but they have received funding in the order of tens of millions of dollars for the projects that are have already gone on and are underway currently. And we expect that we will continue to pursue grant funds to help defray the cost of this this effort, both tranche, the remainder of tranche 1 and tranche 2.
That is correct, Rob. We have gotten in the tens of millions grants and we'll continue to pursue this.
Great, thank you. Lindsay Way had a follow-up question, which was, can you confirm that all the sinkholes throughout the Tarpon River neighborhood show signs of urgency to have these drains and infrastructure issues pushed forward faster? Then also temporary water diversion question that was just asked again by another neighbor is huge. Like Mike Stone said, the water comes up over the wall and through the drains and has nowhere to go other than inside everyone's home. That last flood, I asked Fix It to install the pump station and emailed Dean Trentalis with no reply. So two sort of separate questions, one regarding sinkholes and Tarpon River neighborhood, and the other one with regard to temporary water diversion.
Certainly sinkholes are an indication of problems with typically some kind of underground infrastructure, that we're losing soil mass in some way. So if you have the locations of where some of those sinkholes are, I imagine some of that has already been maybe submitted under Fix It FTL. But if not, if you could put that in the flood survey, and just note that that you're seeing the formation of sinkholes associated with these storm drainage problems, that would be very helpful. And then the second part of the question was temporary diversion.
Temporary water diversion question that was just asked again by another neighbor is huge. Like Mike Stone said, the water comes up over our walls and through the drains.
Yeah.
It has nowhere to go.
I know that, and again, someone from the city might want to chime in on this one too. I know that the city is, whenever we have an event, the city is very active and works diligently to try to move their pumps around to deal with the worst areas. But I know that, they have a limited number of pumps. And so it's a bit of a chore to try to get them around to all the places that are having extensive flooding. But I know that they put a lot of effort into that, and they're trying to do the very best job they can with the resources that they've got available. Again, I don't know, Omar, Marie, if you want to add on to that.
The only thing is that we mobilize pumps once there is a flood or when we know there is going to be a flood, but we cannot leave pumps permanently in a location, and that's been a request from many residents, and we cannot really do that. We have to move them in as the flood happens or before it does. So we're prepared, but we cannot leave it on a fixed location. If that's what he's trying to ask on this.
Great.
Okay. Last but not least, Trisha Halliday said, thank you so much for your response. So that is all the questions. I hope I didn't miss anybody. I don't believe I did. If you need to follow up, obviously contact the city. We've with the website there. Closing remarks, anyone?
Again, appreciate everybody taking the time to join us tonight. And we really do appreciate your time, and would really appreciate your taking just a few minutes for everybody that shared with us a problem that you're having in your neighborhood, in your community. If you can put that in one of the flood surveys, that it's a huge help to the team. So thanks again. Hope everybody has a great rest of their evening. Yes. Deborah, Omar, any closing remarks from the city?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
No, just thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes the meeting.